Let me discuss with you why we should be studying macroeconomics. Broadly, there are three motivations. The first is in our individual self-interest. Second is what is known as cultural literacy. Third is as a matter of civic responsibility. Let me dwell on each of these a bit. Let us take the first one, self-interest. How does a study of macroeconomics helps to protect our self-interest? This I would like to convey through an example. Now, many of you have already worked in the IT industry, so you have a fair exposure to the workings of the IT industry. Now, every year we hear that IT companies go to engineering colleges and they hire students in say, if not in thousands, but say in say hundreds of numbers. Now, of course, if I ask the question why they are hiring, of course they want to engage them in different projects, therefore they are hiring. But the point that I want to convey is a different one. When the companies are hiring fresh pass outs, it is not that they ask them to join projects the very next day. The many times companies also do not have projects, but they hire because they are expecting that new projects they will be getting in the months ahead. So instead of waiting for the projects to come and then search for people, it is a good idea to tap the fresh talent which is coming out of to colleges and universities, and to have them in their fold, so that when there is a need, they can be instead of wasting time to look for scouting for a manpower, they can be directly channelized to the projects. Now, what happens during the interregnum? That means the person, the student, somebody has a fresh pass out has been absorbed into an IT company, but he is not assigned a project. What happens during the interregnum? As you all know, he is put on the bench. Now, who are on the bench? The one category of people that we just discussed, the fresh hires who are yet to be assigned a project. The second category of people who are on the bench on the bench are the people who have just completed a project, but they are yet to be assigned a new project. So during the interregnum, they are also on the bench. Now, consider a situation, one IT professional who is already experienced, who has put in 5 years in the company. He has made his work is well recognized. He has been working with a banking client for last 3 years. The project is complete, and now the person has joined back the head office, reported the HR, and he is on the bench since last 15 days. Now, in the meantime, a new project comes, but this pertains to the aviation industry. Now, when the being an experienced person, when the HR asks that would you like to work for this new client which is belonging to the aviation industry, now what happens? You have one choice. Okay, I will work for a new client. But sometimes some people, what they do, they become choosy, and they say no, we will wait for some more time. Let a new project from a industry with which I have experience and expertise, I will work for that client rather than going to work for a new client. Now, that is fine when things are going good. When the going is good, to being choosy is all right. Now, suppose the economy is going through a downturn for last 6 months, and the company is not getting many projects. Rather, the many projects which were in the offing, some of them have been withdrawn because of the poor economic growth projections. Now, in this kind of a situation, if you are not keeping track of what is happening around you, that the economic growth prospects have dimmed, and not many projects are coming, and you and in that kind of a scenario, if you try to be choosy, what happens that you don't go for the new project which is belonging to the aviation industry. You are waiting for your preferred industry project. In the meantime, you are on the bench, and during all these things which is happening, the topmost management decides that perhaps we given the way things are happening over the last 6 months, perhaps in the situation is not going to improve significantly next 2 to 3 years. So the topmost management decides that there will be a layoff of say 20% of the people of the workforce. Now, when the company at the topmost level, the decision has been to lay off 20% of the manpower. Now, who is to implement it? The HR people are to implement it in the organization. Now, in this kind of a scenario, when the HR is going to implement a decision to lay off 20% of the workers, on whom do you think the axe is going to fall fast? The answer is quite obvious. The people who are on the bench, they first feel the brunt. Now, our experienced person who has put in 5 years, who has got whose work is recognized, but because him being choosy at a time when things are not going good, perhaps he has to be laid off. Now, this situation could have been handled differently by this person in question, if he were if he were aware of what is happening around him, and he would instead of being choosy, he would have taken up whatever projects came on his way. Perhaps he could have avoided this unwanted scenario. This example which I am sharing with you is not a fiction, is not a fictitious example, but a real life example. And in fact, one of our alumnus shared this with me. In fact, when we were once discussing that how things are, it is way back in 2007-8. So when I asked him how things are, it was in 2007. He said things are so. But then I asked him that we are getting a lot of media reporting as to that people are being laid off in the IT industry. Is it a deep-rooted problem, or these are stray instances? So he said that he was working with the IT industry. He was in Bangalore. So he said, no, this is correct. People are being indeed asked to go. So naturally, out of curiosity, I asked him that who are the people who are asked to go? Is it that the incompetent ones, the unproductive ones? So he said, no, we can't really say that it is the unproductive ones are asked to go. Sometimes people who are quite competent, they are also asked to go. Now, so when I could not get an answer, a definite answer, I changed my question. I asked him that then you tell me, who are the people who are able to retain their job in this kind of a scenario when the company is going to is deciding to lay off some people. Who are the people who are able to retain the jobs? Now he said it is, he gave one word answer. He said it is the smart ones who are able to retain their job. I was quite curious as to what is meant by smart people. Who are the smart people who are able to retain their jobs? Now I asked him to elaborate a bit. Then he only told me that the example which I shared with you, the scenario which I shared with you rather, that the people who are smart enough to know what is happening around them, they are able to retain their job. But the people who are unaware, who are caught unawares, or who are unaware of what is happening around them, they they are the ones who generally lose out. Now, I asked him, in fact, it was a natural response that is it not silly that somebody doesn't know what is happening around him? Now, his response was that being a person from the IT industry, he said, no, it is very common to come across people who are quite competent, but they mind their own work. They don't even bother to read the newspaper. So they lead a different lifestyle. So they are very choosy in what they want to do or what they don't want to do, and being unaware of the larger economic scenario, they sometimes do not exercise the right choice when different options are before them. So they are the people who are able to who are not able to protect their job, whereas the smart ones are the ones who keep a tab on what is happening around them, and they cling on to what comes in their way during rough times, because they know that these rough times are not going to last forever. A recession or a recessionary situation is going to last for a year or two. After that, things are going to improve. So you can always join a project of your liking, but during bad economic periods, it doesn't help to be choosy. Similarly is the case when one should be very clear as to when to ask for a wage hike, or ask for a bonus. Now, if you know that you are a good worker, you are contributing to the team, and you go to the HR manager at the time of your annual appraisal and ask him, hey boss, I need at least a 30% hike, or else I will look for other options. And if things are not going good for the company, perhaps the HR manager's response would be, better you do that. Now, so one should be very clear. One should be very clear as to what one is asking at what time. Now, suppose the economy is doing well, and the company is getting a lot many projects are in the pipeline. Now, at that time, if you say I need a 30% hike, perhaps you will be given that, because the company also knows that you are a good hand and they don't want to lose you. So being aware of what is happening in the macroeconomy serves in our own interest, that is to know what to ask for when and what not to ask. What is the timing matters a lot. So it is so one should be knowing what is happening in the macroeconomy in his or her own personal interest. In fact, one of the Russian revolutionary, Leon Trotsky, has put it very aptly. And many students of my course, they remember one thing much after this course, is that this statement by Leon Trotsky, which he said, that you may not be interested in the macroeconomy, but the macroeconomy is interested in you. So what does this mean? What does this sentence means? This sentence means that you may not bother to know about what is happening in the macroeconomy, but the happenings of the macroeconomy is going to have an impact on you. So it is better, and as we know, that being forewarned is forearmed. So knowing the macroeconomic pulse is like a forewarning, and this forewarning can very well come handy when when you are making various career moves, or when you are trying to ask for a hike, or you are looking for a change. So in purely in for individual self-interest, one should be taking care as to understand what is happening in the macroeconomy. The second reason why we should be studying macroeconomics is what is known as cultural literacy. You know, most of you are educated now, but are you culturally literate? How do we define somebody as culturally literate? Now, let me take another example. Suppose you are working in an organization, you are working in a regional office, or you are working in a field office. Now, every time you ask for something to the administration or to the HR, it could be a very petty thing, like asking for a printer, or asking for an additional hand. Suppose it's a IT company, and you are in a particular team serving to a particular client, suppose a banking industry client. Now, in your team there are all technical people are there, but you are asking for a person with a banking domain knowledge. Now, when you ask for a person with a banking domain, with an additional hand who has got a knowledge of banking, now or it could be just a petty thing, like getting a separate printer for your team in the organization. Or what kind of response generally you get? Invariably the response is, we can't pamper you any further. We are on a cost cutting spree, so better you manage with whatever resources have been given. We think you are given more than what you have been given more compared to other teams. So these kind of responses you get. But so the formal channel of communication doesn't work, and mind you are not asking anything for your own personal gain. You are asking to improve your own efficiency at work, your own productivity at work, your means yours or your teams. Now, what happens when the formal communication doesn't work? What works many times is the informal communication channel. See, say we all know that companies have quarterly meets, business meets, business review meetings. Now, in those business review meetings, starting from the top man to to all the field functionaries are all present. Now, what happens in those business meets, during that, after the day long meeting, in the evening there is some socialization event is kept. So what happens in those socializing events, you come across people discussing with themselves, and the topic of discussion broadly centers around what is happening in the economy, because that is what is reported in the newspapers. Now, suppose it's a discussion about the exchange rate of rupee vis-a-vis the dollar depreciating significantly, and that is what is reported in the newspapers over the last, say, 1 week or so. And also it is being reported that the inflationary pressures are building up in the economy. Now, with this kind of and the growth rate has reached a new peak. So with this kind of events, when people are discussing, suppose the top bosses are there, and the head of administration is also there, the chief operating officer is there. Now, in that means not only your bosses are also present in that kind of a scenario, and they are discussing about or things happening in the economy which are being reported in the newspapers. In this kind of a scenario, suppose you try to join one such group of and they are discussing on certain issues, because they are not so close so as to discuss personal things, and they have already discussed the business in the daytime. So this place at this time they are discussing about the newspaper reportings about what is happening in the macroeconomy, and possibly its impact on the business. Now, when you try to join one such small gathering of 5-6 people, and they are discussing about, suppose, say, the sustainability of this high growth rate which was obtained in the last quarter. Now, suppose you are not able to make any head and tell of what they are discussing. what would you do? What would your natural response should be? To just simply try to passively walk out of that group and try to look for some other group where they are discussing something, where you can contribute or you can participate in their discussion. Now, the more senior people are there in a gathering, mostly the discussion centers around issues concerning the macroeconomy. Now, if you are able to participate intelligently in those discussions, you can make a mark for yourself with your top bosses, and you will also earn their respect. Now, but that requires a knowledge about what they are discussing, and in essence it boils down to having a knowledge of the way the macroeconomy works and the various issues which are affecting the macroeconomy, and the details of a particular issue, why suppose growth is higher, from where this high growth has come. Like, is it purely a base effect, or it is or is it a one time effect, or it is continuing over the last few quarters. So unless you are and from where it is coming from the external sector, or from investments, or from consumption, or it is coming from government stimulus. So unless you know the intricacies of the various forces which is giving rise to a particular macroeconomic number, you would not be comfortable discussing about them in a public forum. So when we talk about cultural literacy is your ability to engage meaningfully or intelligently on macroeconomic issues in public discussions or public debates. So cultural literacy in a way also, knowledge always helps. Now we are saying a particular kind of knowledge makes you more culturally literate, and being culturally literate, you are not only getting one additional knowledge dimension, but also it is also helping you in furthering your own interest. I would take that example of suppose you have been asking for a additional person with a domain knowledge of banking to work with your team so as to increase the team's effectiveness, and your requests have been turned down by the local administration. Now, if you have been able to make an good impression with your top bosses, and suppose the head of HR is there, and he has been he has you have earned his respect of being somebody who is knowledgeable and who has a particular point of view, who understand things. Now, after the discussion, suppose casually if you say, maybe we would suppose casually we say that I needed to discuss something with you which is related to my day-to-day work, and you will be lent a year. That means if you say that we need a person with a domain knowledge in banking to make us more effective, most probably the response you would get is that okay, once you go back, you drop me a mail or you give me a call. And what could not be done through the formal communication channel is very well achieved through the informal communication channel, and that has been made possible because of your cultural literacy. So first was individual self-interest, second is cultural literacy. The understanding of macroeconomics makes you cultural literate. The third thing that I would like to share with you, that why study of macroeconomics is important, because ultimately it is a matter of civic responsibility that we choose the right government. Now, and we are able to appreciate the nuances associated with different policy pronouncements. Now, the next elections are due in less than maybe 7-8 months. So, when the during the election, the manifestos contain the economic policies of various parties. Now, suppose when you are casting your vote, you please remember that you are not only casting your vote to the person who is in the fray, but you are also casting your vote to the policies that the person has espoused. Now, suppose let us consider two scenarios. One political party's candidate is saying that as a part of their party's philosophy, they are going to provide free electricity, and there is another person belonging to a different, a separate, a different candidate belonging to another political party. They are saying that we will not provide free electricity, but we will try to rationalize the supply so that the peak load demand is well met, and there is less power outages. Now, between these two scenarios, if you are choosing the first candidate, lured by free electricity, see, remember, there is no free lunch in the system. Now, if somebody is promising you free electricity, that electricity generation, distribution, electricity involves cost, and somebody has to bear the cost. So if you are given free electricity, the expenses incurred in providing that electricity will be raised by imposing additional taxes. If additional taxes are not imposed, then perhaps you will get free electricity, but only for an hour in the day. So for 23 hours you will be without electricity, and for 1 hour you will get electricity, and that free electricity. Now, the second candidate, who has been talking about rationalizing the peak demand, maybe that party is exploring options that how well to ensure grid connectivity so that the peak demand is met without much hassle. Ultimately, you are casting your vote, you are exercising your choice for a particular policy also. Now, as a matter of civic responsibility, it is important that we choose the right we choose the person with the right policies, and at least we should be aware of the implications of the various policies that a particular political candidate is announcing. Unless we know the implications of various policies that a particular person may be saying, we may be making a wrong choice in while exercising our vote. And maybe ultimately, if a person with skewed policies, or a party with a skewed policies come to power, ultimately, as citizens, we have to bear the burden of faulty policies. Now, in the political economy literature, there are studies as to the voting behavior of people, though it is not linked directly to our discussion, but just as a matter of additional information I am sharing with you, that broadly voters are categorized into two. One is the pocketbook voters, and the second category is the sociotropic voters. Now, pocketbook voters are the ones who, before casting their vote, ask the question, if this person or if this candidate, political candidate, comes to power, what he is going to do for me. That means how his policies are going to affect my pocket. But in contrast, the sociotropic voter is asking the question that if this person comes to power, what he will do for the society. So the sociotropic voter rises above his narrow interest and thinks about the implication of his voting decision on the larger society. Now, surveys have been done, but mostly in developed countries, that to find out generally the people are belong to which category of voting. Are they, most of the people are sociotropic voters or pocketbook voters? Before I answer, I would like you to guess. I think many of you would have guessed that most of the voters are pocketbook voters, but in actuality, the surveys find at least that most of the voters are sociotropic in nature. Now, in India, what is the scenario? Maybe we don't have much information, but it is anybody's guess. Now, the next session, what we will be discussing is how does an economy work, and in that we will be discussing about the circular flow of income. The circular flow of income is nothing but it is a simple depiction of how an economy works. That means we would generally, the economy can be seen as a two-sector economy, or a three-sector economy, or a four-sector economy. Now, a two-sector economy involves only households and business or firms. So households are one sector and business or firms are the second sector. Now, all the interactions takes place between these two sectors. um, we can add a third sector, which is the government sector can be added, so that it becomes a three-sector economy: government, households, and business. We can also add another sector to make it a four-sector economy, the external sector, where we are talking about exports, imports, capital flows, a host of things, so that it's a four-sector model: households, business, government, and uh, the external sector, the economy's interaction with the rest of the world. That we can also add the financial system into our analysis also, because financial system channelizes savings from households and makes funds available for business to invest. So, but we can go on adding different sectors, but the point will remain the same, that we would show the interaction between the different sectors so as to depict how does an economy function. We will start with a two-sector economy that we will take up in the next session.